Thank you very much for joining us for the final steps and Q&A webinar for the AgCAREERSTART program. As it sits, we've currently got 6 days left to go in our application process for our 2023 intake of the AgCAREERSTART program, which is very exciting. But we know some people will have a few last-minute questions, queries, so we will have a good chunk of time at the end of this for a Q&A session, but hopefully we can get a few of your questions answered as we go. So first, I'd just like to let everyone know, as I said, this is being recorded, and as such, any questions you do ask throughout the duration of this webinar will also feature in the recording. If you don't want to speak on camera, you don't have to. You can just pop all questions in the chat and we will answer them as we go. And I would also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands from which we are all calling in from today. I'm based in the ACT and I'm therefore calling from Ngunnawal country, and I would just like to acknowledge their enduring culture as farmers in Australia and acknowledge their elders past, present, their leaders past, present and emerging. Let's jump into the first slide, if you don't mind, Steph. Steph's going to drive for me today because there's always seems to be tech issues, but just a quick catch-up slide. We're here to talk about AgCAREERSTART. That is a 10 to 12-month gap year program with on-farm placement. So this is an agricultural-based program. If you're listening to any of this, that doesn't quite sound right, now's the time to jump off. But if it does, let's move on because we should know all of this already. So my name is Kayla Evans and I am the project manager for the AgCAREERSTART program. As I said, based in Canberra at the National Farmers Federation head office. My role within the AgCAREERSTART program is, as it sounds, I oversee the project delivery and basically get to work with my fantastic team. So Chloe's not with us today, but my colleague Stephanie is. Steph is she's waving, Community Engagement Officer. And Steph's role within the program is really to ensure the welfare of our participants and to make sure everyone's having a great time in the program. So if you do find yourself on the program next year, you will get to know Steph quite well, as you will also get to know Chloe quite well as also. So Chloe is our Training and Career Development Officer. Unfortunately, she's not with us tonight. But Chloe's role within the program is to administer the training budget that all of our participants get access to. She helps guide you in your training journey on the program. For more information about both of those sort of parts of the program, I would encourage you to go back and watch previous webinars, which are all available on YouTube. Let's jump forward, Steph. So we're going to chat a little bit about what some of our participants this year have been up to, because it does really help set the scene for some of the opportunities that might be available in the 2023 program. This program, if you're not across it already, you don't get to select from a list of placements where you get to go. We match on your behalf. So we have a list of farmers and we have a list of our participants, and we do all the hard work of matching you guys up. So we're really looking to get down into the detail of what would make a good match. Think about it like a dating profile. We're essentially the matchmakers in the back end, trying to make sure that we find a really great relationship for you. So as far as our participants have gone this year, they're just about wrapping up their 2022 gap year. I can't believe it's October already. But it's been a national program this year and it will be again next year. This year, as you can see, we've had mixed sheep and grain placements in South Australia. We've had beef placements up in Queensland, horticultural placements up in the NT, cotton in New South Wales, broadacre cropping in WA, and dairy in Victoria and Tassie as well. But that's just a very small snapshot of the placements we've had around the country this year. But I know you're all wondering, what are some of the opportunities going to be like for next year? And so we have got a few profiles of our host farmers to show you. So we'll jump forward to the next one. So what we're really trying to show you with some of these profiles is just the kinds of opportunities that are available. Not all of these will be available to you specifically, but it just, I suppose, highlights who we're working with and where we're working with them. So broadly, these are some of the industries that have applied to host participants in the program. So we've got farmers who run cattle, sheep, who work in horticulture, forestry, dairy, poultry, pork, broadacre cropping, cotton, which is also not in there, viticulture, and as I mentioned before, mixed enterprises. Mixed enterprises make up the vast majority of our farmer applications, which is great because it allows you to get experience both typically on the cropping side of things and also on the livestock things as well, whether that be in maybe sheep or beef. Jump forward for me, Steph. So just a reminder, guys, if you have any questions throughout tonight, chuck them in the chat box and we will answer them as we go, or throw your hand up if you want to. So this is one of our host farm bios for 2023. So this is a little teaser for what might be available to you next year. Tipperary Station was actually involved in the program this year, and that's Lucy on screen there, who did her, or is still doing actually, her placement up at Tipperary Station. Tipperary is located in Adelaide River in the Northern Territory, which is approximately 2 hours south of Darwin. And the placements up at Tipperary, whilst it's a working cattle station, the placements we actually have up there are in their horticultural and broadacre operations, which is actually a really innovative space up in the Northern Territory. Not many farmers do it, and so pretty exciting opportunity for Lucy. And Lucy actually went up there because she's studying environmental management next year at university, and so she was looking for somewhere to exercise some of those skills, and Tipperary have employed her in a conservation and rangelands management role, which is pretty cool. So as you can see here in that photo, she's doing some backburning. But just a bit more info about Tipperary there. As you can see, conservation environmental role. Tipperary is quite a large station, so employs approximately 50 to 70 staff. So that's massive. Being so remote, that's actually pretty unique and exciting. Lots of remote stations don't have that many people around, so that's pretty cool. Tipperary also provides air-conditioned single accommodation, so you get your own room. You get 3 cooked meals per day, and they are amazing meals. I have been to visit Lucy. They have Wi-Fi, internet, a swimming pool, tennis court, social club, and work vehicles as well, which is pretty cool. So that's one example. We'll flick to another example now, which is on the complete other end of the spectrum of what you can do in your gap year. And this is Green Space Vertical Farm, which is located in the Sydney CBD. So Green Space is a horticultural operation, as you can see, and they grow microherbs and other smaller produce direct into the restaurant industry in New South Wales. So they run these fantastic small footprint farms in the basements of skyscrapers in Sydney. So if you're someone who's keen to try it out, working in agriculture, but not 100% sure about leaving home or going too far afield, this might be perfect for you. This is Luke, who is currently working at Green Space this year. And Green Space is really fantastic because if you're interested in sustainability, if you're interested in innovation, Green Space is doing all of those things at the moment. And Green Space also, whilst they don't provide accommodation and they don't provide meals or anything like that, it's more like a typical office role, I suppose. They're very regular hours of work. They do provide fantastic remuneration, which is pretty cool considering you're living and working in Sydney. So that is example number 2, and we will jump on to example number 3. Which I believe is South Banaba, yes, in Mungindi in northern New South Wales. So Mungindi is on the Queensland-New South Wales border, and our farm hosts out there are absolutely fantastic. They are wonderful mentors for young people coming into the industry. At South Banaba, they run extensively grains and cotton with a little bit of beef as well. But I would expect if you ended up on this placement, you would likely be working mostly on the grain side of things. And it's a traditional mixed enterprise, but they do have a really diverse staff. So really young staff. We've got a participant there this year, right through to older, more mature staff who've got a lot of experience. And so they're really well set up to mentor someone green, which is great for you guys. South Banaba also provides self-contained accommodation, whether that be in a cottage or a donga. And typically at South Banaba, that accommodation is individual, so it's yours. They also have Wi-Fi and actually pretty good 4G coverage, which is good for the area. However, you do need to prepare your own meals, which is different to Tipperary Station. They provide work vehicles for business purposes only. So you will need to have your own car, but other than that, that's pretty cool. I would say this is a pretty typical example of what we've got available in the program. We do have some mixed and other cropping enterprises that don't offer accommodation, but when you apply, you'll tell us in the application process whether or not you're happy to go somewhere without accommodation, and we will match you accordingly. But if you require accommodation, let us know, and we will always match you with someone who does provide accommodation. We'll move on to the next one. So hopefully by now you've had a look at the application system on the website. Unfortunately, it's not, you can't save your application, which kind of sucks. We'll work on that one for next year, but the 4 things you need to have prepared before you do start your full application is you must research agricultural industries and have a think about your location preferences. So if you've had a bit of a look at the application system, you might have seen that you get to select from a drop-down list how far away you're willing to travel from home to undertake your gap year. So for some of you, that might be you want to stay at home and commute to your placement. So perhaps you might be better off going somewhere like green space, or you can select that you want to stay in the state or territory that you're in. I believe for both of those options, we actually ask you how far away from home you'd be willing to travel. So you could tell us then, I only want to travel up to an hour for work, or I'm happy to travel within my state, but I really want to stay within, say, 500 k's of home, because then I want to be able to go home for long weekends and those sorts of things. You also need to think about which agricultural industry you'd like to work in. If you're not sure, please get in touch. We absolutely want to help you figure it out. If you're very new to industry, we understand that some of these terms like horticulture, viticulture, poultry, all sounds a little bit confusing. You just want to work on a farm. So that's where Steph can really help. So if you've got questions, pop them into us in an email, and Steph can always, I'm sure, happy to pick up the phone and have a chat with you. You also need to prepare your 500-word statement of intent or a 5-minute video. This is really important because it really helps us figure out how best we can match you. So before, when I talked about that whole like dating profile matching process, this statement of intent will guide us in that process. So tell us about yourself, tell us about your goals, tell us about your background, anything special about you, whether you've got special skills or maybe you've got horses, whatever it might be, tell us all of those things, because it really helps the farmer get a bit of an understanding of you as well. You must prepare an up-to-date resume. We know you guys won't have a lot of work experience. That's okay. That's what this program is for. What we do want to see in your resume is any of your extracurriculars. So maybe you are involved with a sporting club, a church group, you volunteer, you babysit, whatever it might be. Make sure all of that's included in your resume. And then you also need to identify in your network a referee who can provide a written character reference for you. Now, this written character reference is provided on a template which you can download during the application process. So when you start the application process, there'll be a little pop-up that says, have you done your reference check? The reference check part of that, it has a hyperlink, and that hyperlink will automatically download to your computer the reference template, and then you need to send that template to your referee for them to fill out. And that reference template includes things like how well your referee believes you would go in an isolated or a regional location, how suited they believe you are to agricultural work, and basically given plenty of opportunity to sing your praises in that reference template. So, and then they send that direct to us, which we then match with your application in the back end. So that's how the application, I suppose that's the steps to getting ready for your application. And then the application process itself is pretty straightforward. I don't think there's too much in there that you actually need to prepare for. Let's jump on. All right. So we're very much nearing the end of our application period, which means we're starting to turn our attention to how do I know if I've made it into the program? So you definitely won't hear anything before the 18th of October because that's the application close date. But once you have applied, you should receive a confirmation email. And then if you are shortlisted in the program, you'll receive an email from us, which will be very soon. I believe it's about the 24th of October that email is scheduled to go out. So sit tight until the 24th of October. You'll get a shortlisted email. And then after that, we enter matching phase. And so there may be a period of time after the 28th when you won't hear from us for a little while. That's okay, don't stress. We're doing all the hard work of matching in the back end, and we'll be in touch with you as soon as we've made a match. And we'll go through that process for a little while. If we can't make a match with you, we will let you know as soon as possible. So just sit tight, don't stress. If you don't hear from us, it's almost good news, I would say, isn't it, Steph? Yeah. So just reinforcing, we do not screen based on experience. We're not reading your applications looking for people with the most experience in agriculture. We are looking for people with the most enthusiasm to join the industry. So tell us why you want to have a crack. That's really what we're looking for in your statements of intent and in your application. You will note in the application process, there's also a little question right at the end which says, is there anything else you'd like to tell us? Use that question box to give us any additional info you think we might need. So if you really want to do something specific on your gap year, if you really want to go somewhere specific on your gap year, if you've got working dogs you want to take, you've got horses you want to take, that's where you need to tell us all of those sorts of things. So there's a little top-down view, I suppose. But essentially, hopefully you make it through matching successfully. You'll have an interview, all those sorts of things. A full view of the application process is available in our previous webinar, which is available on YouTube. So if I'm saying anything that you don't quite understand here, I would hazard a guess that that question is actually answered in the previous webinar that we conducted a couple of weeks ago. But assuming all goes well, you'll be matched and your on-farm placement will commence sometime between the start of January and the end of March next year, which is really, really exciting.
And just to reiterate, Kayla, your point, when you do get matched with the farmer, if you haven't watched one of our previous webinars, you will then get the opportunity to interview with that farmer. So that's really your chance to ask them about the role they have on offer, and we'll move on to that next. It's the next slide. But yeah, you'll get that chance to sit down with them, whether that's virtually or if you can go out in person, which is ideal.
So like Steph said, you will get the opportunity to interview your host farmer. This is a really important thing to start thinking about now as we enter matching phase, because chances are you'll probably be doing interviews before the end, well, before Christmas certainly, but almost probably before the end of November. Some things we encourage you to ask in the interview, because this interview is not just for the farmers to interview you. This is about you interviewing the farmer as well to make sure the placement is suitable for you. You think it's going to be a good fit. So some things to ask them if you don't already know before the interview. Accommodation. What's it like? Who lives in the accommodation? Do I need to bring my own bedding? What size bed is available in the accommodation? All those sorts of things. Do they require that you have a driver's license, or should you at least let them know what kind of driver's license you have? How far away is the nearest town and what facilities are in that town? Is there a doctor's in town, or will you need to go further? Is there a grocery store in town, or do you need to go further than that? Ask them all of these things. You ask them what a typical day on farm is going to be like, what your role is going to look like, what they see you doing, what the rates of pay will be. This is really important. So we don't set these rates of pay. All of our farmers pay at or above award level wages, which is basically the level of pay that the government dictates or the legislation dictates that our farmers must pay at a minimum, so minimum wage. But many of our farmers pay above that, but you do need to ask them, and you can negotiate with them. If you think it's not high enough for you to move, then have a chat to them about it. Understand that you're coming in with very little experience, and so there may be some negotiation from their side of things as well. But certainly do have a good chat to them about rates of pay. Don't be shy to ask them about what you're going to get paid. You don't have to go out to farm without knowing what you're going to get paid. It's really important that you ask that question. Ask them about time off. Do you get annual leave? Will you be given some flexi time? So if you work overtime one week, can you get some extra time off the next week? Can you work on a roster? Can you maybe work sort of 4 weeks solid, do a month's pretty much straight work, and then take 2 weeks off? It's completely flexible. Every farm is different. So make sure you have that conversation with them when you meet them in their interview. And then can you visit the farm before starting? If the farm is close enough, I would highly encourage you to go and visit. It is really, really strongly encouraged by our team that you go out and have a look at the farm before you start working. Of course, for many of you, that won't be an option because you'll be moving across the country. But if you can, do go and say hello, get a little look around, take mum and dad, take your brothers and sisters, whatever you like. The farmers are very friendly and welcoming, and they'll be very happy to have you come out for the day to have a look around. And who knows, given the time of year, you might get to sit on a tractor for harvest or a header for harvest or something like that before the year is up.
And even if an in-person visit is not practical, let's say you're from the eastern side of Australia and you get matched with a farm in WA, even asking the farmer to take video footage of the farm and the accommodation, things like that, just so you, in your mind, you get an idea of where you're going and what it looks like.
So as I mentioned, you should be arriving on farm anywhere between the start of January to the end of March. That is completely dependent on yourself. So maybe you've told the host farmer, hey, look, I've got actually a camp that I'm doing over the school holidays or after I finish school, whatever it might be. So I'm actually not available until the 1st of Feb. That's fine. Let them know. Whatever the start date you agree on, that's between you and your host farmer. But after that happens, you've agreed upon a start date, you will sign your employment contract, and then we will send you some detailed onboarding information. This onboarding information is really important to read because it tells you how the program works. So one part of the program is that you've got a job on farm. The other part of the program is that you have this training opportunity and the upskilling opportunity attached to the program. And that's where you'll liaise with Steph, Chloe, and myself. So you have your host farmer who is your boss, but we're also sitting in the background ready to talk to you, and there's some requirements under the program as well. So that onboarding information will detail all of those things. But a lot of it, again, is covered in previous webinars that we've run, which, again, all available on YouTube. Part of that onboarding package will have you do some online farm safety training before you go to farm. So none of our participants will go to farm without having done at least some introductory safety training. So this just teaches you how to identify risks on farm. And then you will also do an on-farm induction when you get there, and that's something that the farmer will run through with you. And then within the first 48 hours of arriving on farm, Steph will give you a call or a text just to see how you're doing. And hopefully that will set up the relationship between you and Steph for the rest of the program. Steph will continue to check in on you throughout the year, so do use her as someone to lean on. Throughout the year, we encourage our host farmers to involve you in the local community, whether that be in local recreational clubs such as the SES maybe, or the local bowls club, the footy team, hockey club, whatever it might be, but also in agricultural networks as well. So introducing you to their peers. When you join, you will also be introduced into the AgCAREERSTART Facebook group. So you will have a 2023 cohort Facebook group. So that's your way to communicate with each other, to lean on each other for support, share experiences, ask questions. We also have plenty of events for you guys to attend next year, and we won't overwhelm you with that, but there are plenty of travel opportunities through the program, which are all fully funded. So definitely keep an eye out for that when that information lands in your inbox. And then, as I mentioned, Steph will check in regularly, but so will Chloe. But Chloe will be checking in with you to talk about training opportunities. And there is always multiple feedback channels for you. You'll probably be inundated with opportunities to communicate with us, but we have a dedicated phone line, we have a dedicated text line for our participants, and then we also have anonymous feedback forms for you to fill out. So if you're having an issue on farm that you're not quite comfortable talking about in person, or you don't quite want to mention it to one of us, you can actually submit it online, and it de-identifies you, so we can at least get a bit of feedback, or if you need us to investigate an issue or speak to a farmer on your behalf, we can do all of those things for you. And I think that sort of sums up the formal content for this evening. What we're going to launch into now is our frequently asked questions portion. So I'm going to run through the questions that are on screen. I'm also going to answer any questions I haven't from what you guys submitted when you registered for this webinar. But as I'm talking through this now, I would strongly encourage you to pop any additional questions in the chat box, because once we get through those questions, that will be about it for this webinar. So first question is, I don't know what industry to pick. Can you help me? Like I said, absolutely. Steph's there to help. She's always there to help. She can answer any question you've got between the three of us. So my background is the grains industry, Steph's is the dairy industry, and Chloe's is the sheep and wool industry. So we've got a pretty good scope on most of the opportunities that are available and what it's like to work in those industries. So just ask us. We've got plenty of personal experience. And I don't want to move too far from home. Do you have anything local to my area? So our advice around preferencing the industry in the application system is this. If you've got a specific location where you want to live, don't be too specific in your industry application. So where I talked about that, do you have anything else to tell us question, that's where you would say, I don't mind so much what industry I get into, but I really care that I live in this geographic location. Also, on the flip side, if you're really specific about wanting to go and maybe work in the horticultural industry, you might have to be a bit more open and flexible about where you are happy to live. And I hope that makes sense. If you are specific on both, we will do our best, but that we may not have a farmer in our system who matches that criteria. So just have a little bit of a think about that. I've covered the pay question already. Again, if you have any questions about pay or the specifics for different industries, you can either ask us, or you can look up what's called the Pastoral Award. So that covers most placements, and there's also a Horticultural Award as well, which would be relevant for anyone who's going to be working in horticulture next year. You can just Google both of those things and they will tell you at your age what you should be getting paid at a minimum. How do I know what to pack? Fantastic question. I love this question. It's different for everybody, but like I said, this is something you should discuss in your interview. Most of you will be required to have high vis. Most of you will be required to have closed-in shoes. Some of you will be required to have steel caps and other safety gear as well, and other PPE. Definitely check that with your farmer. Sometimes the farmer will purchase it for you. Sometimes you'll be required to bring your own. So just think about what's in your wardrobe. You'll also need to bring your whole life, your tax file number, your superannuation information, all of the above. But that's probably a question for mum and dad, I reckon. And what if I don't like the farm? So this is a great question, and we don't force any of our participants to stay anywhere that they're not happy. So if you're having issues, we're already going to know about it because you're going to have been in regular communication with Steph. So it's really important that if you are having issues, you raise them with us nice and early, because then we can help you. Don't get to a point on farm where you're really frustrated and then it causes you to just leave. That's not what we want for anybody. It's not a good outcome for the farmer. It's not a good outcome for you, because we might be able to help you. We have backup farms. We have other farms in the areas who might be willing to take someone on mid-year. So don't be afraid to reach out and just throw your hand up and say, hey guys, like, I'm not 100% sure that this is the right thing for me. We can absolutely help. And that includes changing your farm host if the need be. Likewise, if our farmers are not quite happy with things too, sometimes that might result in us needing to find a new placement for a participant as well. But once you're on the program for the year, so once we've selected you essentially into the program, unless you have a significant breach of a code of conduct, or you basically endanger somebody else, or you like I said, have a significant breach in a code of conduct, we will try to keep you in the program for the whole year, and that means finding you another placement if things go wrong. And will you be the only employee? Well, that very much depends on the farm. We have got participants this year who are the only employee on farm, and some of them love it, which is fantastic for them. Me personally, I'm a social butterfly, so I'd love somewhere with maybe 50 to 70 employees like Tipperary Station. But as you can see from the examples we showed, every single farm is different. So if that is really important to you, if having people around is really important to you, then you need to let us know in your application process. I'm just quickly going to read through some of the other questions. Is food included in accommodation, and what do the rosters look like? So we've talked about rosters very briefly already. Hopefully you can kind of get the idea of what I'm saying. Every placement is different. You need to talk to your host farmer, and if you want something specific, you have to tell us in the application process. Is food included? Some yes, some no. So very much depends. Typically what you'll see is that the rate of pay, so the money that you get paid into your bank account, likely reflects whether or not you are getting food included in your remuneration package, if that makes sense. So if you're getting board provided to you, electricity, gas provided to you in a working vehicle and all these other things, and food, you might have a slightly lower hourly rate of pay than someone who's not getting any of those things. They sort of balance each other out, if that makes sense. I just saw a question pop up in the chat. Do you need to have your reference in by the 18th? Our preference is definitely yes. The sooner you get them in, the better. You definitely need them in before the 24th. If we don't have them by the 24th, we can't move you into matching. So it's really, really important. If you haven't started your application, get it started. But then you've got about a week after applications close to bang on the door of your referee and say, can you please send that off? If you know there are any issues, sorry, Steph, go.
Sorry, Kayla, I was going to say, unless there's significant circumstances as to why, in which case please just send us an email and let us know, because if we know your reference is uncontactable and you really need that person, for example, and they're going to be back a little bit later, we can work with you, but we definitely need to know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's good info, Steph. I can't remember what I was just going to say in response to that, but yes, so we will proceed with matching shortly after the 24th of October. So yeah, if we don't have it in then, important that we know why it's not in, so we can at least get the ball rolling on your application. Your referee, just quickly while we're covering it, does not have to be an employer. Had a couple of questions like this in previous webinars. It can be your sports coach, it can be your school teacher, it can be your next door neighbour who's known you since you were 7 years old. And so it just can't be someone who's related to you, basically. Can't be in the family unit, can't be your stepmom, can't be your aunt, can't be your second cousin. It has to be someone who can speak to your character, who's not blood related or otherwise married into the family. Another question that came through the registration was, is there any opportunities to work with horses available? That's a great question. They are very limited. A lot of the time, people who require you to work with horses require you to actually bring your own horses. If you don't have horses, but you really want to work with them, again, that do you have anything else to tell us box, pop it in there. We'll see what we can do. Treat that like your little wish list, and we will see what we can do, but no promises. We do have placements that involve horses, but they're more so for people who would be taking their own. Just while we're on the topic of animals, working dogs or dogs, pets, if you have pets that you want to take, let us know, first of all. Second to that, you need to talk to your host farmer. So in the interview process, you need to mention to them, hey, I've got 2 Labradors. They're basically couch potatoes. I want to take them with me. Is that okay? They'll say yes or no. Don't show up on farm with dogs or other animals that your host farmer doesn't know about. It's really, really important. Number one, for biosecurity purposes, it's really important you don't bring any animal onto a property that the farmer isn't aware of, because they'll want to make sure that they're appropriately vaccinated and all those sorts of things. Where are some of the farms located? We've covered. How will accommodation work? We've already covered. And that is all the questions that I see in the registrations there. Steph, is there anything we are forgetting?
I don't think so, but just to reiterate your point, the team, all of us are very friendly and very approachable. So if you go away after this webinar or you have a think about your application over the weekend and there are things that we didn't answer or things that you would like to know, please just reach out. You can send us an email. We're more than happy to call you and talk you through where you might like to go or any questions that you do have. So please reach out.
We might just jump to the next slide because it's essentially the closeout slide, but it does have our contact information there for you. So we have a dedicated email address, which is just agcareerstart@nff.org.au. If you go to the website, our phone number is also available there as well, and we will answer that as soon as we can if we don't pick it up when you call. So I'm not seeing any other questions. So I think that about wraps it up. We are now 6 days out from applications closing, guys. So if you haven't already, get it in. We'd love to see your application. Can't wait to meet you all. Hopefully we get to work with you all next year. We do get to meet a lot of our participants in person. We come and do site visits and say hello, and we see you at events. So hopefully this isn't the first time we get to meet, and I'll see you all very, very soon.